Meanwhile, a federal high court in Rivers State has restrained the Edo State government from enforcing a compulsory COVID-19 vaccination directive. At the launch of the second COVID-19 vaccination in the state, Governor Godwin Obaseki issued an order banning residents who cannot prove to have taken at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine from attending social functions. That order, which was to take effect from September, was challenged in court as a breach of the people's fundamental rights. Now the court has asked all parties to maintain status quo, while hearing will begin on September 10.
All right, and joining us to discuss these issues is a legal expert and executive director, Citizens Advocacy for Social and Economic Rights, Frank TITIE. Frank, my friend, always good to have you join us on News Night.
Thank you, and always my pleasure.
Let's start it this way. Nigeria COVID-19 Response Alliance, a coalition of 70 CSOs and faith-based organizations, described the statement credited to the governor as outrageous, insensitive, and excessive. How do you describe it?
I think that's not being fair to the state governor, because he has a responsibility to protect the people of Edo State. And by the way, I wonder why the Federal High Court, all the way in Port Harcourt, is issuing an order with regards to fundamental rights enforcement procedure application to be affecting the Edo State governor. It doesn't operate like that by our laws. The fundamental rights enforcement procedure rules are very clear. Order 2, Rule 1 states that when a right is likely to be violated, or is being violated, or it has been violated in that particular place, that is where you must file that application, and not go and file an application in Port Harcourt to affect the Edo State governor. I think it's an anomaly. I don't know when we will come out of this, outrageous way we are abusing our processes of court. But by the way, our laws give the state governor that latitude to a large extent breach rights. In this case, particularly Section 46 of the Constitution, which states that nothing shall restrict any law that is reasonably made for the purpose of protecting public health. So the issue now is public health, and it also goes further to describe it.
Reasonably made. The issue is
reasonably justifiable. Reasonably justifiable in a democratic society. Now, regulations are, to some extent, laws that are made possible, and if you pursue them through statutes and then ultimately the Constitution. But there is a problem, a very big problem, when you create this impression that it is mandatory and it's compulsory. Good and fine. We've established the premise that the governor is on a good ground when he says he wants to protect the people of Edo State.
So you're saying this is legal. The governor does have the legal basis to go with this, because in 2019 he signed the Infectious Disease Prevention Regulation 2020.
Yes.
So he does derive powers from that. But when it comes to public health regulations on COVID-19, who we have the final say? We're talking about fairness, liberty, justice. On the one hand, people say, I have the right not to take the vaccine for their own reasons. But on the other hand, there are people who say, you're endangering me.
I don't think anybody's breaching that right. Privacy rights are in place, and then the right to liberty, the right to make choices, the right to freedom of thought and conscience, they are all in place. They're not being breached here. But we're talking about a situation where Article 8 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights Ratification and Enforcement Act is a Nigerian law, I'm not talking about the regional law, that states that every Nigerian has a right to access democratic structures and again services of the state, and to access government buildings at all times. But we're talking about protection here. We are in a state of an emergency somewhat when we have this dreaded COVID-19, the Delta variant that's killing people. And first and foremost, a governor like Obaseki, I'm not his apologist, but he should be commended to the extent of wanting to go this extra mile. We need to strike a balance. That is, yes, make sure that you don't breach those individual rights. Then also try to apply moral suasion, and in addition to the fact that when you can now apply some positive law in saying that you cannot assess such and such things on the social condition, on the fact that you may be putting the health of other citizens at risk if you're not vaccinated.
All right, TITIE, well, just a while ago that a report talked about is within the right of individuals to refuse vaccination. That's coming from Faisal Shoaib. But that's not actually where I'm going to. Obaseki says all residents are giving 2 weeks ultimatum for vaccination. Within 2 weeks, after 2 weeks, you must show evidence. One, does the Edo governor have the capacity? That's what I'm coming, because we know paucity of vaccines. And then two, isn't this going to occasion a rush, a rush that will invariably, go against what you're trying to protect?
I must agree with you, because first and foremost, we have a culture in our country which is a fire brigade approach to things. We haven't talked about whether he has enough vaccines for the millions of people in Edo State yet, and then creating a situation of unnecessary panic by creating a deadline. The governor didn't have to say that, but with regards to, I need to emphasize this so that we don't create a wrong impression. There is a serious public health emergency we're being faced now beyond COVID-19. We're having a Delta variant. And so if we're having governors that are innovating ways to compel the people that they understand very well, they understand their culture, they understand their mentality, and they believe that if you don't apply some measure of force to compel the compliance, we might not record anything. But with regards to logistics, in terms of logistics and preparation for all of that, I can tell you for certain that the presumption is that the Edo State government is not ready, yet it is trying to play to the gallery that it's by giving an unnecessary ultimatum. The ultimatum didn't need to be given. People need to be persuaded, people need to be compelled, but that right to refuse the vaccine must be respected. But that right also is restricted, meaning that if your constant refusal to accept the vaccine or take the vaccine is proven scientifically that it will put others at risk, then government can take action against
you. Start refusing.
That's an interesting conversation, because we have even seen in instances where there's paucity of vaccines, the little that is available goes to waste because people refuse to go and take them in their arms. But thank you so much, Mr. TITIE, for coming on the show.
Always my pleasure.